is working as principal at Sialkot, and Madam Dr. Professor Sophia Farooq is working at Quaid-e-Azam International Medical College. She's principal also, and they are working tirelessly for corneal transplant surgery. And I was thrilled to join them as third female ophthalmologist for the same cause. It's an honor to have them both, and they will share definitely their expertise for today's session. So we will start our session with few verses of Quran. I don't know.
अल्लाह के नाम से शुरू।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
अल्लाह के नाम से शुरू जो निहायत मेहरबान हमेशा रहम फरमाने वाला है।
इन्ना अअतैनाकल कौसर।
बेशक हमने आपको हर खैर व फजीलत में बे इंतहा कसरत बख्शी है।
फसल्लि लिरब्बिक वन्हर।
बस आप अपने रब के लिए नमाज पढ़ा करें और कुर्बानी दिया करें, ये हदियाए तशक्कुर है।
इन्न शानिअक हुवल अबतर।
बेशक आपका दुश्मन ही बेनस्ल और बेनामो निशां होगा।
Jazakallah. Please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Iram. She's consultant ophthalmologist at Multan with special interest in vitreoretina.
Assalamu alaikum. Good day to all of you. OCT, or the optical coherence tomography, is one of the most helpful and promising diagnostic modality of today's ophthalmology. As all of us are well aware of the indications of the OCT, yet I feel that there is some lacking in understanding the basic concepts regarding the development of this machine and its principle. By the way, I am Dr. Iram Raza, working as consultant ophthalmologist in Shehbaz Sharif DHQ Hospital, Multan. I have no special conflicts of interest to disclose over here. I am hopeful that I will be able to make all you to describe the OCT, know the different basic principle of the OCT and working of OCT, while also will be able to discuss different types of the OCT, and you will inshallah also will be able to assess the future possibilities of OCT at the end of this presentation. OCT is basically a non-invasive, high-resolution, three-dimensional imaging technique that uses the light waves to capture the cross-sectional images of the internal structures of tissues. Because we are in ophthalmology, so we will talk about the human eye only, although it is used in other specialties like derma, dental, cardiovascular also. This is the reason that we also call the OCT as the optical biopsy or in vivo biopsy or the optical ultrasound, because here we do not take the proper tissue out and make the histological preparation, just we can see it in vivo as well. The basic principle is the Michelson interferometry or the low coherence interferometry. What is this? It is that when the incoming light whenever strikes the half-silver mirror, it is divided into the two parts. Both these parts have the fully reflecting mirror at their ends. And when these parts, when the light reflects unite together again over here and they form an interference pattern. This interference pattern is formed depending upon the light, distance traveled by the light from both the paths and their constructive or destructive interference. Next. Okay. Certain unique features are that it is non-invasive because it uses the ultra infrared light, which is not causing any photothermal or photochemical damage to the human eye. It gives high resolution as compared to the other modalities like the ultrasound or the MRI, and the measurement speed is definitely fast because the light is used over here as compared to the sound or the sound waves which are used in the ultrasound. And deeper penetration is well expected. Real-time visualization is its unique feature too. Certain components are, first one is the light source. The light source is most of the time is the light with the broad bandwidth. Broad bandwidth means the light with the multiple frequencies is used in this. The next component is the beam splitter. When the light passes through the beam splitter, it is divided into the two components. That is, the one is the reference beam and other one is the sample beam. In the reference beam, the mirror or detector is located at the end of the path, and from where it is reflected back, and from the sample or the tissue which is being studied, the light reflects the tissue and is reflected back. These two rays of the light, they again unite at through the beam splitter, become the single ray, and they are detected by the photodetector, which is fourth component. Here all the processing occur and the images go to the digital processing unit, and ultimately we find the OCT image. Here you can see this is the light source, broadband light source. It passes through the fiber coupler, divides into the reference beam for in case the time domain has the reflecting mirror at its end, and the other beam which goes to the sample to be studied over here, and from both these the light is reflected back. The difference between the path of these two arms is responsible for creating the ultimate image. These two arms, they give the light which is again united at the fiber coupler, passes through the photodetector, and ultimately signal processing occurs and we get the image. Few key parameters which should be understood are that the resolution is simply just to detect the 2 points as the completely separate points. It has the two different types, axial resolution and the lateral resolution. The axial resolution states that the minimum distance that can be differentiated between the two reflectors which are located parallel to the incident beam of the light. And the other one is the lateral, which states the difference between the distance between the objects lying side by side perpendicular to the beam. Scanning speed, just the number of the A scans which are captured per second. Imaging depth depends upon the penetration of the light, and sensitivity just to detect the faintest point. Signal or the noise ratio, this basically shows the worth of the machine, or it shows that the OCT is of the very good quality. The imaging processing occurs through the axial scans. First, axial scans are formed, then the axial scans are formed along the line. through the whole line that ultimately is converted to the B scan, and by mapping the sample in X and the Y scanning arms, the ultimately a three-dimensional picture is formed. All of us are well aware of that it is used for the early diagnosis or the ongoing monitoring of any disease, and even it can guide the surgeon for his or her approach. Few imaging modalities. OCT is of the two basic types, time domain and the Fourier domain. In the time domain, the reference beam, the time is basically used to measure the strength of the signals received from the sample arm. While in case of the Fourier domain, here the frequency is used as a measure to measure or detect the strength of the reflection from the sample tissue. The Fourier domain is further divided into the swept source, where the swept source and the first I would like to talk about the time domain. Time domain, I have already mentioned the two slides which are basically of the time domain. In the time domain, the path length of the reference arm, it varies in the time. Where the reference beam, you can move the mirror back and forth until you get the interference pattern which is well coherent with the light image received from the sample. Due to the movement of the mirror, it is well expected that it will be slow process, and definitely the less pictures will be captured per second, and that's why we expect that the time domain is of the low speed and less resolution. Resolution of only up to the 18 microns can be expected. It only gives the two-dimensional picture. Then is the Fourier domain, frequency domain, as I have already told. Here you can see that the yes.
Dr. Iram, can we cut it short, a bit short?
In the Fourier domain, you can see that the wavelength or the frequency line is used to detect the images. And in the spectral domain, it extracts the spectral information by distributing the different optical frequencies onto a detector stripe with the dispersive material. And here the spectrometer along with the superluminescent diode is used as a light source. Here broadband light source is used, and this is used to detect the light reflected back from the two arms. Full scan depth is possible. Next is the swept source. In the swept source, the name is received with the concept that the light with the tunable frequency, it passes and it is used as the light source. It sweeps through the tunnel and it detects it also shows the various frequencies with the time coded domain, and it has the advantage of very high frequency. Future developments are the increased resolution, multimodal imaging, functional imaging will depend upon, will be the assessment of the tissue function and not just the structure, and miniaturization is the also important thing. The last slide is that what should be the new technologies in OCT that we can expect or that would be expected. First one, in the OCT, you can go for the quantitative measurement of the blood flow or the velocity profile within the vessel or the vessel diameter and the vessel geometry. Next is the OCT with the visible light, that is obviously for the better resolution. Polarization sensitive OCT, that will help us in the additional contrast to be provided for the measuring and evaluating the change of the polarization state of the backscattered light. And that will help in the depth assessment. Adaptive optics, they improve the resolution of the optical imaging by actively compensating the static and dynamic aberrations of the optical system, like the pupillary aberrations. They can be managed over here. And next is the high-speed OCT. Ultimately, the advantage you can well assess. Next is the elastography. It will be used to measure the elasticities of different ocular tissues.
Sorry for
And it will
interruption,
be-
Dr. Iram. We are sure. Right. Okay, thank you.
It will be used for the early detection of diseases like the keratoconus, presbyopia, or the glaucoma. And for any questions?
Thank you so much for sharing your insight on OCT. Our next speaker is Dr. Aisha Fawaz. She is working as assistant professor at NAMS with special interest in refractive surgery. One more request, please. All speakers are requested to observe the time. 7 minutes will be given. Thank you so much.
So, Assalamu alaikum and Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm Dr. Aisha Fawad and I will be discussing anterior segment OCT with you. This is the sequence of my presentation. We've all discussed already that it is a non-invasive imaging technique. It's high resolution, it gives us cross-sectional images of anterior segment tissues, and it is literally considered as an optical biopsy in clinical practice. We'll not go into these details of low coherence interferometry. We know now that there are multiple types of OCTs, time domain being the older one, and then swept source is the latest version of OCT that we have. As we navigate through the time domain and we go towards the spectral and then the swept source OCT, we know that the wavelength has improved, hence improving the penetration of tissues. The A-scan speed has improved from 500 scans per second to 100,000 scans per second, and the resolutions and everything, the technology is literally advancing with every passing day. So, no financial interest, but some of the swept source OCTs that are available include the Cassia from Tomy and Triton from Topcon Japan. So when we are doing the anterior segment OCTs, we are offered multiple modes. These are the corneal modes, the angle imaging, anterior segment 3D reconstruction, and the pachymetric mode. Here are some of the limitations of anterior segment OCT. It has got limited depth perception, especially beyond the pigmented tissues. It cannot really give us any yield. Now coming to the major part of the presentation, which is the clinical presentation. So this is how a normal cornea, a healthy cornea should look on anterior segment OCT. The first layer, the hyperreflective layer, that is the tear film, and then followed by the hyporeflective epithelium, then the stroma, and so on. Anterior segment OCT has traditionally been used for the size and depth measurements of the corneal opacities. We can, here we can see all sorts of corneal opacities. This corneal opacity is a limited one to the epithelium and anterior stroma. Then this is the one which is involving all layers of cornea. This is a picture in which we can see there's irregular stroma, and above that there's a very smooth layer of epithelium. So this understanding is very important once we want to plan for treatments of these corneal opacities, whether surgically, whether with laser, or whatever we are doing. Another picture, this is that of pseudophakic bullous keratopathy. Here we can see that there is corneal edema. The thickness has gone up to around 1,000 microns, and then there is irregular endothelium. Corneal transplant surgeons, they really go hand in hand with the anterior segment OCT. They use it for the pre-operative, the post-operative management of their transplant patients, especially when they have to study the graft-host interfaces. post-operatively. Here we can see a DSAC patient. This is DSAC tissue which is forming a very nice, well-oriented acute angle with its host. And here we can see a post-op picture where the graft has detached from its bed, and then again after treatment, rebubbling, the graft took back its position on its bed. So all this management was possible with the help of anterior segment OCT. Then another patient of DALC who had a pseudo anterior chamber formed post-operatively, and then the surgeon obviously had to intervene and do further treatment of the patient. This is an example of actually a patient who underwent phaco surgery, and after phaco surgery, the patient developed Descemet's detachment, and over a period of time, around 2 weeks later, it was observed on anterior segment OCT that it was resolved on its own, and the corneal edema, which was earlier observed, had gone spontaneously. Anterior segment OCT has a role in refractive surgery as well, because post-operatively the flap complications, especially, they are studied with the help of anterior segment OCT. We can study the depth of flap and its contour with the help of this machine. Here we can see that at the interface there is a diffuse haze, and this is a patient who had DLK. Another picture of a patient who had post-traumatic, folding of the flap. Again, with the help of OCT, we can see that the flap is rolled on its own self. This is a patient having a striae, and on the anterior segment OCT, we can exactly see that the striae are not just involving the epithelial surface, but also the stromal surface. Again, now in phakic IOL, their pre-op management, we can study the AC width, the scleral spurs, and the crystalline lens rise. Then phakic IOL, post-operatively, the vault is studied on the basis of anterior segment OCT. Some of the anterior segment OCT machines, they also offer us epithelial mapping. This is a picture from OptoView, and here we can see there is epithelial thinning over the cone, and after a PTK and CXL, the patient later on had a regular smooth epithelium on top of its corneal surface. Anterior segment OCT is also, it also allows us to study the intracorneal ring segments once we have implanted them. And here is a picture of an ICRS which was extruded internally into the anterior segment. This is a patient of acute corneal hydrops. We can see the Descemet's has got perforated over here. Another interesting application of anterior segment OCT is in the monitoring of the keratitis patients. This is a patient who had granular dystrophy, and behind the granular dystrophy and the corneal opacities, there was corneal haze. The surgeons did anterior segment OCT, and they found that there was a lot of corneal edema, there was intrastromal cysts, and there was endothelial disruption along with some KPs. So the diagnosis of viral keratitis was made, the patient was treated, and he was back to his usual state of corneal health after the treatment. This is a patient of infectious keratitis. Here we can see this patient, he had actually a negative Seidel test. And once the anterior segment OCT was done, it was found that the cornea had already perforated, but the test was negative because of flat AC. This is a picture of fungal keratitis, how it looks on anterior segment OCT. In glaucoma as well, anterior segment OCT has a profound role, and it is traditionally used for angle measurements, although it cannot replace the traditional examination by gonioscopy, but still it does have an advantage of being very quick and easy, convenient for the patient as well as for the surgeon. So these are the pictures of some of the open angle. This is also open angle, then this is a narrow angle. This is an incomplete PI on anterior segment OCT. This is stromal damage after PI and endothelial plaque after PI. Yes, this is a case of tube erosion. We can see that the conjunctival tissue is completely lost over top of the tube. Now, anterior segment OCT can also be used for ocular surface disorders, like this is a benign conjunctival nevus. These nevi have intraretinal cysts, which might not be, visible on slit lamp examination. Then for conjunctival intraepithelial neoplasias, we can see thickened epithelium on top of the lesion. And here again, this is a lymphoma, conjunctival lymphoma, which is homogeneous mass beneath thin epithelium. So these are pathognomonic features of different diseases on anterior segment OCT. And I would just like to conclude that the anterior segment OCT is a great adjunct and a very good tool for surgeons to better understand the disease process and to better manage their patients and monitor them as well. And thank you very much for your listening, and if you have any questions, please do let me know.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. Now I will call Dr. Sadia Farooq. She is consultant ophthalmologist at Shifa International with expertise in glaucoma.
My topic of discussion is OCT RNFL. OCT is an important tool for the diagnosis of glaucoma, and it can help in our diagnosis or it can mislead us, basically. So today I'll focus more on how we can avoid pitfalls when we are examining or seeing a patient OCT analysis. So the first and the foremost thing is we must look for any artifacts that can be there. A number of artifacts, a study has proven that 46% of the artifacts were found in 2313 eyes of our patients, and there can be many. The most common were decentration, PVD, and posterior RNFL matching artifacts. So how we should avoid it? We should go in a systematic way. First of all, we must look at the signal strength. So signal strength, and every machine has its appropriate signal strength. Second, we must look at whether the scan is centered properly on the optic disc or on the macula. Otherwise, it is a decentered scan. The third thing is a B scan. We should look whether it is properly segmented, the upper and the lower, and it is falling, or some other retinal pathology is taken as a false thickness in it. In the line graph, we have a line graph of age-matched individuals that is shown in green, yellow, and red. And the person's line graph peaks should match with it. Otherwise, it will be taken as a false reading of thinning. Similarly, if it is not properly segmented, we see the patient's line graph going down in the 0 microns, which is not possible because even if everything is gone in glaucoma, we have some residual glial tissue thickness, so it never reaches 0. Then we see some defects here, like a block of signals here and a block of signals here, which is falsely taken as thinning. So that's why we must look at scan completely to avoid these. We should look at the whole scan. This is next message. If it is properly taken and we see a green on pie chart, we should look at the line graph, and we may miss some defect or some thinning there, because focal defects might not be strong enough to produce a whole sector defect. So the different parts of the optic disc we should look at from top to bottom. We have a thickness map, and normally we see a butterfly pattern of the superior supratemporal, infratemporal bundles there. Then we see a deviation map. Then we look at the B scan and we look whether it is properly taken and the segments are proper or not. Then we have RNFL thickness map, and above that is a neuroretinal thickness map of the age-matched individual. Then there is RNFL quadrant map and the clock arm map. So one by one, we will look at all these segments. We must keep in mind that the patient is falling into the normative database or not. So one example is high myopes. They have two problems. They have thin corneas and they have infratemporal RNFL bundles that are shifted temporally. So this patient has a yellow showing here as compared to age-matched individual because his bundle is shifted temporally, which is showing as a white over here. So that's why it's misleading us. So RNFL basically follows the horizontal raphe, it goes from the macula and then finally ends up at the optic nerve head. So we can scan it at three places: neuroretinal rim, RNFL, and then macular ganglion cells. So in subsequent example, we'll see how all three can help us. We should keep in mind glaucoma hotspots, the inferior and the superior vulnerability zones. This is RNF analysis of a normal patient. First of all, we have confirmed the scan is taken properly. We see green here, and this is a normal eye because this scan of our recent map is falling within the green of the age-matched individual. In a suspicious disc, and a patient has a high cup disc ratio, OCT can help us because it shows that everything is normal. And then we see symmetry between the two eyes. So we compare one eye with the other, and the maps are falling within the green. Sometimes there can be asymmetry in the size of the disc, that is asymmetric cup disc ratio. One is large disc, one is small disc, but the scan will help us to know that both are normal disc with normal thickness of the RNFL on the descent map and on the pie chart. OCT can help us to diagnose pre-perimetric glaucoma when the visual field defects are not there. And here we then look at all the components of the OCT so that we are not misled. First of all, rule out artifacts. Here we see thinning of the RNFL, and at the same time we see thinning of the minimum rim width as well. That is the neuroretinal rim. So both are showing the thinning at the same point. Another complement thing is the macular ganglion cell analysis. So this is another example of a patient who has a normal RNFL scan. But at the same time, the thinning is shown in the minimum rim width, and at the same time in the ganglion cell, both are showing thinning at the same point so that they complement the findings. This is another example when we are misled by just looking at the quadrant map and the clock arm map. But when we look at the descent map, it's falling at the low average meridian, and here we see few dips. And then we see the macular ganglion cell is showing the same dips in the supratemporal, infratemporal area, and we see some early visual field effect as well. So the three things complement each other, which can give suspicion of pre-perimetric glaucoma or early perimetric glaucoma. OCT helps us in monitoring progression as well. We see progressive thinning in subsequent pictures and images of the patient that are taken over the time that shows progression. We should keep in mind that OCT doesn't help us in monitoring progression in advanced cases because that it reaches a floor effect and further information is not achievable. Then we can take help of macular ganglion cell analysis in these patients if visual fields are not possible. So just an example of how the panoramic view, so how the defect goes from the ganglion cells towards the optic nerve, and we can scan it at different points and then look for the association. OCT also helps us in ruling out neurological diseases. So this is a scan of a patient who on first image is shown to have thinness here in the RNFL layer and the neuroretinal rim width as well. But when we look at the macular deviation map, it is exactly following the vertical meridian and it's on the right side. So this is right homonymous hemianopia that is shown on visual field. There are some stroke patients who cannot undergo visual field, and we can just do macular ganglion cell analysis and can scan a neurological disease there. So upcoming is that CVA, even patient who have thin RNFL, they have a high risk of the coronary artery disease as well. So this is something new that probably will be highlighted in future. So just how much time we have, let's see. I will just quickly show some images of red and green disease. So we must have this concept of green disease is a false negative diagnosis and red disease is a false positive diagnosis on glaucoma. So let's look at this picture. Here the segments are not properly taken. So lower segment is falling within the RP and the choroid, and it is mistaken as a green disease because these segments are not properly highlighted because of the motion artifact. So this is a red disease. Any idea why we have a red disease here? So we have to look at all parts. If you look at the optic disc, what's abnormal here? We see peripapillary atrophy here. So this thin area is falsely taken as it's not matching with the age-matched individual. So that's why it's falsely taken as a red disease. We'll look at this scan. The segments are not properly taken. So this is falling below 0 and it is going into the choroid. So that's why it's falsely taken at red disease. And what we see here, it's falling into the 0. So we do not expect thickness of the glial tissue to be below 30. So red disease. We see red disease here. If you just look at the deviation maps, the quadrant map and the clock arm map. But if you look at the RNFL bundle, so they are not properly aligned. So patients' RNFL bundle are not matched with the age-matched individual, so it's probably a myopic eye. We see green disease here because its posterior vitreous phase is coming into the segments and it is falsely taken as a thickened area. What's wrong here? We see an abnormal mapping. So the scan is decentered. We have thick fibers here. We have thin fibers as we move away from the disc. So here it is taken as thicker and here it is taken as thinner because it is a decentered map. Again, poor signals, the first thing we must check. While we think everything is abnormal and what OCT is telling us is wrong, it's not the case always. And sometimes what we see is everything normal here, but one dip here, which can be a sign of glaucoma. And always remember, we have to compare one eye with the other. So what we see here is just a dimness of a butterfly pattern here. here, and then in the line thickness map, we see a focal dip. So this is early glaucoma coming on the left side, which is found on symmetric analysis of the two eyes. So just conclude by saying that glaucoma does help us if we watch carefully and look for artifacts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Satya. Now we will hear from Dr. Nazli Gul. She's working as assistant professor and chairperson Khyber Teaching Hospital with special interest in neuro-ophthalmology and glaucoma.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. I'll be discussing the macular OCT, and these are my learning objectives. These things already been discussed. So the basic, I will go through the basic patterns. Different commercially available OCTs have different scanning patterns, and some of them are being incorporated in most of these OCT machines. And the common one are the macular cube scan, radial scan, and the line scan. This is the cube scan. It consists of a number of horizontal lines in a cube, and this cube can be 6 millimeter, 7 millimeter, or 12 into 6 into 6, 7 into 7, or 12 into 9 millimeter. It gives a 3D view of the macula. And this is the radial scan, which consists of 6 lines or 12 lines. But the disadvantage of this scan is because the machine interpolates between the lines. So the point of interest will be scanned very accurately and very deep in depth, but the pathology that is located away in between these lines can be missed. And this is the raster line, which are horizontal lines, and they can be oriented at different angles. So before going into the layers of the OCT, let's recall the basic anatomy of the retina. It consists of the 10 layers, as already everyone know. This is the internal limiting membrane, then nerve fiber layer, ganglion cell layer, inner plexiform, inner nuclear, outer plexiform, outer nuclear, layer of photoreceptors, and the retinal pigment epithelium. So the inner plexiform layer, this is outer nuclear layer. As you know, it contains the cones and rods photoreceptors. And the inner nuclear layer, it contains the amacrine cells, bipolar cells, and horizontal cells. So the layers that contain the cell bodies of these neurons, they give hyporeflectivity. So these layers are hyporeflective. Inner nuclear layer and outer nuclear layer are the hyporeflective structures. And ganglion cell layer is also hyporeflective because it contains the cell bodies of the ganglion cells. And in the outer plexiform and the near plexiform layer, they contain the synaptic connections. So because of these synaptic connections, they give the hyperreflectivity. And these hypo and hyperreflectivity terms are used while we are interpreting the OCT. This is the spectralis OCT showing all the layers of the retina. Here you can see the topmost is the posterior highlight, which is a hyperreflective structure. Then this is the internal limiting membrane, again, which is a hyperreflective structure. Then nerve fiber layer, again hyperreflective structure. Then the ganglion cell layer, which contains the cell bodies of the ganglion cell. It is hyporeflective. This is the other hyporeflective structure is the inner nuclear layer and the outer nuclear layer. And in between these is the hyperreflective structures of inner plexiform and outer plexiform. And coming to the outer retina, in outer retina, we have 4 hyperreflective bands. The topmost is the external limiting membrane, then is the iris-OS junction. Previously it was called as iris-OS junction, now it's called as the ellipsoid zone. Then come the interdigitation zone, and then the hyperreflective area of RPE. Between these hyperreflective bands, there are 2 hyporeflective areas. One is between the external limiting membrane and the ellipsoid zone, and this is the inner segment of the photoreceptors or the myoid zone. And the other hyporeflective structure between these 2 hyperreflective areas is the outer segment of the photoreceptors. So these 2 areas are the hyporeflective structures. And choroid is visible on OCT machine, and enhanced depth imaging, it gives a more detailed view of the choroid layers. Then outer plexiform layer is divided into 2 layers. The inner plexiform, the inner part, which is the dendritic portion, and the axonal part, which is the outer portion. So this is the outer portion, which is the outer portion of the outer plexiform layer, that is called as the Henle layer. And As you can see, the Henle layer is oriented radially. When in the perifoveal area, it runs almost parallel with the internal limiting membrane, and it is because of this radial arrangement that that is depicted in various pathologies like neuroretinitis, when we have macular star formation, or when we have Henle fiber layer hemorrhage. And it gives this radial orientation gives this layer specific reflectance properties. So OCT is used in various in diagnosing various macular pathologies, especially when the media is clear. It's clearly it's easy to image the posterior pole, the macula with the OCT, but mid-periphery and periphery can also be scanned through OCT. So these are the different diseases in which we go for OCT macula. There are different artifacts. This is the mirror image artifact in which you can see the inverted image. Time? Okay. So I'll not go into detail of the artifact. We'll go through few of the slides. Here you can see the hyperreflective posterior halide, which has detached from the retinal surface but is still attached to the optic disc. So it is a incomplete posterior vitreous detachment. The rest of the retinal layers are okay. Then vitromacular adhesions in the region of the fovea or perifoveal is the vitromacular adhesions. Here you can see all the retinal layers are normal. Then vitromacular traction, here you can see there is a traction which is distorting the contour of the fovea, and there are intraretinal cystoid spaces. So this is the OCT picture of vitromacular traction syndrome. This is a full thickness macular hole. You can see there is a full thickness defect starting from the internal limiting membrane up to the level of RPE with intraretinal cystoid spaces. Let me know when it's finished. Bell to nahi baji. Achha, OCT indices, there are different OCT indices that are used to counsel the patient on prognosis of the macular surgery. And one of them is the macular hole index, in which the height of the macular hole is divided by the width of the macular hole at its base. And this is if it's more than 0.5, then it carries a good prognosis. Should I finish? Can I take 2 minutes? Okay. This is the epiretinal membrane, and you can see the splitting of the inner split within the inner retina. So this is a lamellar hole, and you can see the septa in the retina. There is again epiretinal membrane, and you can see a heaped up edges at the fovea. This is a pseudo hole. So one must differentiate between the two, whether it's a lamellar hole or it's a pseudo hole. Again, ectopic inner foveal layers. You can see there are hypo and hyperreflective layers in the retina with epiretinal membrane, and it carries a poor prognosis after macular surgery. Important is the in diabetic retinopathy we have hard exudates, and these are hyperreflective structures, especially in the outer plexiform layer, but they can be present in other layers as well. And here you can see a microaneurysm. It has got a hyporeflective inner cavity which is surrounded by a hyperreflective line. And this is microaneurysm in cases of non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Again, fibrovascular hyperreflective front. This is PDR. Cystoid macular edema, one can see the ETDR is grid. The central one is 1 millimeter, then 3 millimeter, and then 6 millimeter. If this this is the edema, red, it's showing edema. If it's involving the central 1 millimeter central subfield, it is called as a central involving macular edema. If it's away from this 1 millimeter zone, that it is called a non-center involving macular edema. I think I'll drill. Commonly seen in patients with diabetic retinopathy. Here you cannot see the clearly identified the ganglion cell layer, the inner plexiform, inner nuclear, and outer plexiform layer. So these are disorganized layers, and this is called as the disorganized retinal inner layers. So I think I should finish. Time is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nazli. Our final speaker is none other than Dr. Hina. She's head of retinal images services at Amanat Hospital. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Hina. I work at Amanat Eye Hospital and I head their retinal imaging centers, and I'm so scared of Tanish right now because we were doing an awesome job, but last speaker should get some sympathy. Anyway, so what I'm going to try to do in the next few minutes is to just try and see कि OCT and geography को हम कैसे अपनी clinical practice में use कर सकते हैं. The take home message is don't let the machine command you. You have to command the machine, right? So if there's any new technology, a new imaging technique, you have to ask yourself, how can this particular technology help me in my clinic with my patient and solve my problems, right? So you have to be over on top of the machine. OCT and geography exactly क्या करती है? It's non-invasive. Although it has not been able to replace OCT, or your fluorescein angiography. You have to remember that it has a utility of its own, which I'm going to be discussing. Basically, how OCT comes up with its images, OCTA, is that जब 20 scans की बात आयशा ने की थी, she said from time domain, from 512 scans per second, we've gone down up to 100,000 scans per second. अब इस scan speed को अगर आप इससे भी ज़्यादा बढ़ा दें, तो between one scan and the other scan, the scan acquisition is so fast that you're actually able to image the blood flow through the retinal tissue. And if you set the software up only to detect whatever was moving within that split 1000 nanosecond of a second, you realize कि वो blood flow आप register कर सकते हो. And what you're seeing, it's just like a fluorescein angiography. So when you inject the dye, it's actually the fluorescein that shows up on your images. But since वो fluorescein blood vessels में travel कर रहे, you get this beautiful picture of where the blood vessel is going, and you feel like you're seeing the blood vessels. Either B, you're actually seeing flow. So whatever is hyper-reflective on an OCT angiography is flow, right? So with that basic thing in mind, these are the images that you get. And people always say कि आप कुरान के साथ हदीस रखो. And I was telling my 18-year-old yesterday कि आप कुरान के साथ anatomy or physiology की किताब ज़रूर रखो, because you just end up saying subhanallah to everything when you understand this. These are the these are the different layering of the different plexus that are already present within the retina. अब आप retina की thickness imagine करो और आप देखो कि उसके अंदर there are actually 3 well-defined retinal plexus blood circulation networks that we know of. Alhamdulillah. So this is a normal scan, and if you look at the segmentation, you're able to find out that all of these scans are taken at different depths in the retina. And you're actually studying the inner macular layer plexus, and then you're studying the middle retinal plexus, and then you're studying the deep retinal plexus down to the choriocapillaris. What are the advantages? Non-invasive, fast acquisition, no dye, high resolution, and it images through the blood flow. That's the sell point of this machine. Disadvantages, as with every machine, projection artifacts, motion artifacts. अब आप चूँकि आप blood flow के cells की movement को भी check कर रहे हो, so if the patient moves, the whole OCT machine goes haywire. Or if there's a projection artifact, which I'll be explaining in later, the whole scan goes confused. You have to make sure that you're not the one who's confused, and it's only the machine that's confused, and therefore you have to be able to pick up these artifacts. So this is a good approach to OCT angiography. You assess the scan quality, then you identify the area and layer of interest. Now, OCTA more than anything cannot be interpreted without your other OCT imaging modalities. So you have to have the SD-OCT preferably with you. You need to know where you're looking at. You need to have a suspicious lesion of interest. Say, for example, sub-RPE or and you need to know what I'm looking for, right? So what am I looking at and what am I looking for? Examine the cross-sectional OCT for abnormal blood flow. Choose the segmentation pattern that best captures the area that you want to consider. Then manual manipulation and segmentation, yes, you can do that. So those of you who are lucky enough, like I am, to have these toys with you at your center, you can actually sit on the machine and you can change the segmentation. You tell the machine, as I said, command on the machine. You tell the machine where it needs to be seen, where you need to look, and then you manually segment your layers, and then you say, okay, I want you to look here. And then correlate with other imaging modalities. That's very important, and then be mindful of artifacts. So if now we understand artifacts, do I have a mic here? Mic mujhe de dijiyega. Right. So here is where you're seeing, am I audible? Okay. Here is where you're seeing a lot of motion artifacts. ये आप arrows देखो, इधर क्या किया patient ने एकदम आँख हिला दी है. So while it's looking at RBCs, another certain motion artifact would lead to these kind of vertical lines. ये तो बहुत कम है, आपको अक्सर बहुत ज़्यादा नज़र आती हैं, to an extent that you won't be able to interpret it reliably or give a reliable report. So that is what we call motion artifacts. अब इन दो OCT scans में आप देखें, the scan segmentation has gone from inner layer to middle layer. This is a middle layer in UNFAS OCTA. But you've got these huge big blood vessels that you're not expecting in the middle layers of the retina. But if you look at the superficial layer, you find out that actually superficial layer की blood vessels ही हैं, the identical pattern, and they're showing up in the middle layer. So you have to be able to know कि ये कौन सी चीज़ गलत project हो रही है at a level that it's not normally present. This usually happens with major blood vessels physiologically, but it also happens, for example, अगर आपके पास एक epiretinal membrane है, अब वो epiretinal membrane सब कुछ ऊपर खींच रही है. So where the OCT expects to find the middle retina, वो middle retina को scan करेगी, लेकिन वो सब ऊपर उठा हुआ है. तो आप basically subretinal space में चले जाते हो. So you have to be sure कि इधर आप अपनी segmentation ठीक करो. Secondly, here, it's so exciting to find this hyper-reflective lesion at the choriocapillaris level. Say, yes, ये CNV मुझे पकड़ी गई है. But actually, you have to correlate with the corresponding SDOCT, which is actually showing you कि ये atrophic area है. Atrophic area means more light signal is going to penetrate down to the choroid, and your choroid, physiological choroid, is going to show up and light up more brightly. So you have to be able to correlate this with this, because जब आपने इसकी autofluorescence ली, you figured out कि यहाँ पे RPE है ही नहीं है. And that is why the choroid is just shining up brighter in that very well-defined patch of atrophy that seems like it's a CNV. Similarly, here you know you're relatively comfortable कि ये वाकई CNV है. अगर मुझे सिर्फ ये OCT scan दिखाया जाए, तो मैं कहूँगी इसमें तो कोई doubt ही नहीं है, it's a CNV. So what you do is that when it segments through the lower layer, अब वो automatically machine layer को smoothly यहाँ पे segment करिए, कह रही है यहाँ पे तो खला है सिर्फ, I don't see anything. But अगर आप manually इस segmentation को ऊपर ले आओ, उसकी summit पे ले आओ, where you expect the neovascular tissue, तो इसी OCT को you see it as this, and you pick up the choroidal neovascular membrane. So this by far is the most important slide in my presentation. If you're able to pick up these scans in it, and then the perfect OCT where you see a choroidal neovascular membrane, and then you see के उसके अंदर आपको. So for my CNVs, I usually try to look at the angioflow overlay. Retinal pigment epithelium और Brooks membrane के बीच में कोई physiological blood flow नहीं होता, right? So if you're seeing blood flow between the RPE and the Brooks membrane, you know that is abnormal blood flow, and that corresponds to your CNV. Very beautifully delineated in the NFAS, not always possible. So FFA की गड़बड़ किस्म की एक leakage वाली भरी हुई image की बजाय अगर आपको इतना प्यारा image choroidal neovascularization का मिल जाए, so you're all that comfortable कि हाँ CNV पड़ा हुआ है and I need to treat. Just sifting through my slides, when you treat a CNV, sometimes old CNVs can start to look like this. तो एक भरे हुए शजर की बजाय वो एक autumn season का शजर लग रहा होता है, and that means that you've been treating it well. Similarly, you can look at the OCT images over a period of time as you're treating your lesions. 4 weeks तक the anti-VEGF action starts to recede, and therefore it becomes more flowery again, which it was atrophic in week 1. ये क्या है? Again, if I've been explaining things well, then you'll be able to pick out big patch of RPE atrophy. And therefore, what you're seeing is a physiological choroidal vasculature, not to be mistaken for a CNV lesion, because this is the level where you usually find your CNVs. Diabetic retinopathy, almost my last slide. So it's a good idea that if you're going to look at ischemia, look at the UNFAS maps. But if you're going to look at flow, look at the angioflow map. So CNVs look better in this angioflow overlays, but your retinal diabetic retinopathy assessments and retinal vascular assessments, they look better in your UNFAS OCT maps. And similarly, CNV secondary to other hereditary maculitis, all of you who are dealing with high myopia sometimes come up with a coin hemorrhage. And you don't know कि ये coin hemorrhage क्या spontaneous hemorrhage है, or is it because there's a CNV under. अब अगर इस lesion को आप FFA करेंगे तो all you're going to see is a blockade. बिकॉज सामने ब्लड पड़ा हुआ है, FFA उसके नीचे नहीं देखता. दैट इज़ दी इंडिकेशन फॉर OCTA in mind. Look for an OCTA machine near you and get an OCTA done, because the CNV would light up as a light bulb and you would know the very important demarcation, whether I need to go in with an anti-VEGF or not, right? Similarly, chronic CSRs. For me, one of the best indications for getting an OCTA done is in chronic CSR. Agar recurrence ho rahi hai, I need to know whether there's a CNV there, because that to me is the only indication for anti-VEGF use in chronic CSRs. And hereditary retinal disorders. Do I have time for this? Chalo, I'll skip that. Chalo, thank you so much. I hope.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hena. Because of shortage of time, we cannot have the question answer session. And every speaker has beautifully covered the topic. Right from Dr. Hena with the principle of OCT, with the Dr. Iram with the principle of OCT, and then we have anterior segment discussion and posterior segment discussion. Now I would like the chair to conclude the session, please.
Thank you, all of you, especially the 5 eminent women speakers who presented in OCT, and thank you to the audience who stayed till the end. And I hope you learned a lot from this session. But it's such a vast, OCT is something so diagnostic and so needed now that maybe in the future, every aspect, whether it's OCT A, OCT macula, everything, I think would be needing at least 1 to 90 minutes for session. So this is something that should be done in the future. Thank you so much.
All speakers are requested for shields to be collected. Shields wahan pe. And at the end, we will have a photograph. Dr. Iram, please. Shields yahan pe hain. Dr. Aisha Fawad. आप वहाँ पे खड़े हो जाइए, फिर मैं नहीं, it's okay. वहाँ पे Dr. Nazli Gul. Where's Sadia? Dr. Sadia Farooq. Dr. Sadia Farooq. Dr. Hina Khan. डॉक्टर हिना की शील्ड नहीं है क्यों नहीं मगर हमारे स्पीकर तो है ना उनको देना तो है ना Kindly all are requested to join us for final photograph together.